what do you think the essence of grateful living is? If I want to live more gratefully in my life, which I'm telling you.
First, you have to ask, what are you really grateful for? And there, it's important to realize you're not grateful for what happens at this moment necessarily, because it may be something for which you cannot be grateful. If you get news that your dearest friend has just died, or if there are many, or if you're just faced on the news with oppression and exploitation and misery and violence, you can't be grateful for that. But at every moment, life gives you the opportunity to do something with what life gives you. And therefore, grateful living means learning to avail yourself moment by moment of that opportunity.
Yes.
And that most of the time it's the opportunity to enjoy.
Yes.
And one really has to help people realize that. Just 99% of the time we could enjoy, that we can breathe, enjoy that we have eyes and ears to hear, everything.
And not wait until you have to lose your sight or have to breathe through a machine or have some kind of disease before you can appreciate the fact that you have all of these things.
Exactly, that you have legs. You notice when you break a leg or when you have some difficulty. No, at all times. But that is enjoyment. That is the opportunity to enjoy.
Morning, journeyers. It is March the 14th, I think, 2021. This is Rick. I am a journeyer. I am excited today because Reverend Susan Cottrell is our preacher. And her message is really great. I've already gotten to see it. We're talking about fight and flight and freeze. And this idea that when we're threatened, when we're overwhelmed, when we're tired, there are lots and lots of responses that we might make. One of the things that we've done at Journey over the years is to work on looking at our own stuff and thinking about what Jesus would say to us about slowing down or looking at flowers or looking at birds or just being present with one another. And that's where he says we find God. One of the places, one of the zillion places for Jesus where we find God. There's a scripture later today from the Apostle Paul, that early church leader who is telling his people in Colossae, I want you just to trust that you were created by God and loved by God and that you matter. I want you to trust that, and then out of that, act out of love. Be courageous, be kind, forgive one another. I'm not sure that they're a terrible group of people and they need to be told to shape up. That's just what it is to be a human being, isn't it? So Susan's going to talk about an alternative to any of those natural reptilian brain responses, fight, flight, freeze. I always add fix, right? Fight, flight, freeze, fix. We've just passed the 1-year mark of COVID having its devastating effect on our country, our lives, and our kids, and our health, and our restaurants, and our being together, and all of those other things. I'm hopeful and happy about the vaccine being more and more available. I also know that there are things which a vaccine cannot cure or prevent, and we have soul work to do about what has been so hard. And so Susan's going to help us with that today. And we're going to have a poem by Rumi and a couple of really great films. And I will see you on the other side. I want to tell you, first of all, that you are welcome here, whatever shape you're in, mad, sad, glad, ashamed, afraid, whatever you believe or don't believe, you're welcome just as you are. If you are willing to support Journey Imperfect Faith community with your finances, that would be amazing and good. This is a time of year when that gets hard. And this is a time in the life of our country when we're all feeling afraid and we want to run, fix, fight, freeze, whatever. It's not the thing to do with money, right? The thing to do with money is to give it away and to share it. And then there's more of it. And I will be retiring at the end of this spring. But until then, we all have the same budget to pay that we have all along for a long time. It's very spare. It's very tight. We are good with money, and we give 10% of what comes in away automatically. We are proud of that, and I hope you're proud of it. Plus, we are in the beginning stages of our 20-week discernment process that I'm part of, but you guys are running. And it will end with a discernment retreat that is going to be really, really beautiful. And I bless that. And I am thankful for this faith community that I got to be part of for so long and am still part of and will always be part of. And so be thinking about that, praying about it, sending your love and energy to that process, which we're calling Oasis. And lend your support in whatever way that you can. Let's take a breath. Guess what time it is? It's now. Guess where you are? You are wherever you are. Wherever you are is here and now. And God is there. And there's nothing to be afraid of. Welcome.
General Patton has said that wars are fought with weapons, but they are won by men. We are going to win this war because we have the best men. And because they're going to get better. Much better. The Strategic Scientific Reserve is an allied effort made up of the best minds in the free world. Our goal is to create the best army in history. But every army starts with one man.
Rogers! Get off of there!
At the end of this week, we will choose that man.
Let's go!
He will be the first in a new breed of super soldiers.
Rogers! Get that rifle out of the mud!
And they will personally escort Adolf Hitler to the gates of hell.
Pick up the pace, ladies! Let's go! Let's go! Double time! Come on! Faster! Faster! Move! Move! Squad, hold! That flag means we're only at the halfway point. First man to bring it to me gets a ride back with Agent Carter. Move! Move! Come on, get up there! That's all you got! This army's in trouble! Get up there, Hawk! Come on, get up there! Nobody's got that flag in 17 years! Now fall back in the line! Come on, fall in! Let's go! Get back into formation! Rogers! I said fall in!
Thank you, sir.
Faster, ladies, come on. My grandmother has more life in her, God rest her soul. Move it!
You're not really thinking about picking Rogers, are you?
I wasn't just thinking about it. It's a clear choice.
When you brought a 90-pound asthmatic onto my army base, I let it slide. I thought, what the hell, maybe he'd be useful to you, like a gerbil. Never thought you'd pick him.
Up!
Stick a needle in that kid's arm, it's gonna go right through him.
Come on, girls.
Look at that. He's making me cry.
I am looking for qualities beyond the physical.
Do you know how long it took to set up this project? All the grubbling I had to do in front of Senator What's-His-Name's committees?
Yes, I know. I am well aware of your efforts.
Then throw me a bone. Hodge passed every test we gave him. He's big, he's fast, he obeys orders, he's a soldier.
He's a bully.
You don't win wars with niceness, Doctor. You win wars with guts.
Grenade! Move, move, move! Get away! Get back!
Dummy grenade. All clear. Back in formation.
Is this a test?
He's still skinny.
Like all species, have self-protective mechanisms to help us survive. Our fight, flight or freeze survival response, the FFF for short, is designed to mobilize our brain and body to fight an enemy, run from an avalanche, or freeze to hide from a predator. Our brain sometimes misinterprets safe situations as dangerous and can set off false alarms. When the amygdala, our brain's watchdog, senses and barks danger, our body enters survival mode quicker than our rational mind can react, leaving it trying to figure out why we feel in mortal danger. When the FFF alarm is sounded, we start to breathe more quickly and shallow, causing hyperventilation, and our heart starts beating very fast. These changes can cause strong chest pain, which many people interpret as symptoms of a heart attack, when in fact it's just a result of the FFF activation, which can be relieved through breathing exercises. As a way of getting you ready for action, blood is diverted towards the major muscle groups. Blood flows away from our digestive system, causing the bladder to relax, and we might feel the need to pee. The mouth goes dry, nausea can occur, and we get the butterflies feeling in our stomach. Blood also rushes from extremities, leaving us with cold hands, but often sweaty palms as the action-ready body starts sweating to avoid overheating. Legs and hands can start trembling and feel weak, while tension starts building in big muscles like the thighs, neck, and shoulders. In our head, FFF alarms cause our brain to focus on negative memories, probably so it can scan them to avoid danger and negative outcomes. We get tunnel vision as our pupils dilate to increase our focus and long vision, but as a result, we lose our peripheral vision. FFF activation also reduces our ability to recognize differences in facial expressions. Too much oxygen and too little CO2 can result in dizziness or lightheadedness, which many people interpret as signs that they might faint. But because fainting is caused by a drastic drop in blood pressure, and because the FFF increases both our heart rate and blood pressure, it's nearly impossible to faint when this happens. Over time, depression, anxiety, and high levels of stress all harm the brain's ability to slow or cancel false FFF activations, causing them to happen more often. Knowing the symptoms of false activations makes it easier to recognize and reduce their effects.
If you think about how we're in the middle of a pandemic, and then you take how racialized our society is, a lot of us are walking around with low-grade anxiety or depression. We're feeling, in many ways, just disoriented. And I'm really thinking that the church needs a reclamation. And it's that reclamation of joy and also celebration. But it's not this kind of like joyous, naivete celebration, where a mob of people come together to worship with no masks on. I think, frankly, God will have something to say about that. And we look at the book of Micah, and we know how God felt about noisy, joyous celebrations that ignored the plight of the least, the last, the lost, the most vulnerable, and those who maybe have pre-existing conditions, maybe those who have a comorbidity of factors that puts them at risk, right? So that's a specific type of worship. But when I think about joy, it comes from this authentic place that I believe is just kind of the flip side of suffering. And in many ways, you look at our African American tradition, which is really American history, and how the historical Black church, in the midst of suffering, in the midst of experiencing real indignities at the hands of not only the government, but also the state, the police, people, somehow, some way, in the church space, in the beloved community, they were able to live out a type of worshipful resistance that took an honest assessment of what was happening in the world, took an honest assessment of Jim Crow, took an honest assessment that there were lynchings happening, they took an honest assessment of segregation, and I could go on. And yet, through the hope of the gospel, by the way, that they were given in a distorted form, they were somehow able to reclaim it and find, in a sense, a song and a story of liberation, even in the midst of, in the shadow of American empire, which is what it is and what it was. And it harkens back in many ways to when I think about the Exodus narrative and the liberation narrative, when they crossed the Red Sea, the people of Israel crossed the Red Sea. The first thing, and this was a woman-led celebration, the first thing they do is they celebrate, and Miriam begins to sing, and they begin to sing songs of celebration that were actually connected and not disembodied from slavery and their oppression and the story of making bricks without straw and all those kinds of things. So even the celebration, right, the heavenly celebration was rooted in a story and a communal memory of suffering, yet God in the midst of it show God's self strong in that. And I think that's where the joy comes. It's not through bypassing or glossing over trauma, but it's in taking it on courageously and inviting the Spirit, inviting God into that place of trauma, inviting community, because it's not something that you do alone, and allowing your trauma to be transformed into, like the old church used to say, it becomes eventually the testimony. And it could be a living testimony. You know, it's not one of those like, this is where I was, this is where I am, everything's all good. But in our days, we're living through complex grief with all the images that we see in the world, social media, modern day lynchings, police killings. We're people that are experiencing grief. And I think the greatest act of resistance is when we can claim joy in our Black bodies, in our brown bodies, in our Asian bodies, in our Native American bodies, in bodies that have been ostracized and marginalized. But Christ loves everybody.
Michelle, and I'm a journeyer. This is a poem by Jalaluddin Rumi called The Guest House. Being human is like a house for guests. Every morning, a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house, empty of its furniture. Still treat each guest honorably. The guest may be clearing you out to make room for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door, laughing, and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes. Each one has been sent to you as a guide from beyond.
Hi, I'm Dan and I'm a journeyer. This is a reading from the letter of the early Christian church planter Paul to the Jesus people in the Greek city of Colossae in modern-day Turkey. God has chosen you. You are loved by God and you matter. So your life together must be full of love and compassion. I want you to be kind to other people and not too proud. Be gentle. Be willing to wait for others. Try to understand what other people are feeling and experiencing. Forgive each other. If you have something against someone else, let it go. You are always forgiven by God. Forgive others as well. And always add love to everything. Love holds everything and everybody together. Love makes good things into perfect things. Allow God's peace to have power over whatever feelings come up in the moment. You were chosen to be part of God's body here on earth. Gratitude for that honor will help you act lovingly.
Hello, journeyers. Are you kind of wondering what's next in the world? It's been an unusual year, or 20 years is what it feels like, hasn't it? And I have had to pull myself back from fight or flight, this constant energy of fight or flight. How about you? You know, fight or flight is an amazing automatic protection. That's our body's brilliant way to protect us from that proverbial tiger. It's always a tiger. So we can either fight or run for our lives. But that should be like a very small portion of our lives. Like 99.999% of the time, we're not being chased by a tiger. Well, what's the alternative? What is the ideal state that is not fight or flight? I asked that to Rob, and he said, surrender and stay, which I thought was wonderful. And to be clear, he doesn't mean to to surrender in abuse or to stay with someone who wants your compliance and to take away your agency, but to surrender to the situation in front of you, to be present to it, to take the next step, let that next step emerge and take it. So I thought that was a great answer. But it's not what I was looking for. I had found something that was an alternative to fight or flight, and it's called rest and digest. Yes, I just learned this a couple of years ago. It seems we all know fight or flight, but who knows rest and digest? Those words don't spring to our lips, and that itself seems to be a commentary on our lives, doesn't it? Rest and digest. This speaks to a Zen-like state of peace, to rest from our work, to rest from our thoughts, and to digest what's happening in our lives, what we're internalizing from the world. This speaks to healing and recovery from overwork, from shock, from trauma, like a deer that shakes after it's gotten away from the lion. I just love that. Get it all out. Actually, I think that all animals shake like that. It's just always a deer we talk about, because they all need expulsion from the trauma. All animals except humans. That's what I read. And we need that healing and recovery from shame, from trauma, from, say, a worldwide pandemic, a breakdown in our economic system, and all the other problems that a worldwide pandemic has shown us so clearly. Okay, so rest and digest. But then I just discovered another alternative to fight or flight, which I also really liked. It's called tend and befriend. This speaks to attending our friendships, to our little ones, to our systems that we realized were broken in, say, a worldwide pandemic. Tend to our children and our families. Befriend others in our community. Build cooperation. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So as I put them together, I see rest and digest as self-care and tend and befriend as community. Isn't that a great idea? Now, here's the interesting piece. Tend and befriend appears to occur along gender lines. Surprised? That women are more inclined to tend and befriend, where men are more inclined to fight or flight. I know, it's not surprising at all. Now, I don't know how much is nature and how much is nurture. That would be a different topic. But we can see clearly that in our hyper-masculinized culture, we're all predisposed to fight or flight. And we really both have to work at this rest and digest and tend and befriend. We saw this gender difference clearly, by the way. Rob and I did in our previous work. We worked with families of kids with cancer. And it was so, heartbreaking to see that when the diagnosis came down, very often in a shocking number of the families, the dad disappeared. He was gone. He left his wife and children to deal with this problem by themselves. And that just was a demonstration of the fight or flight that he was predisposed to, because here's this cancer that he can't stop and he can't conquer, can't beat into submission. And so now he takes flight. But the mother was always there. In every family we dealt with, the mother was there. She was there to tend and befriend. And I suppose we helped her to rest and digest. The thing about fight or flight is it's survival mode. It's not growth mode. Fight or flight is not nurture our society to health and well-being mode. It's keep your populace afraid mode. So many politicians, news outlets, religious teachings, religious institutions, even families are all about fight or flight, because it really is an effective way to keep the people on their heels, to keep them scrambling. If you're being taught, if your news outlets, if your family is in any way making you feel that you should be afraid, if they're sending you doom scrolling to make sure that you're afraid of the new mutation of the virus, that bad things are going to happen to you, that you've got to fight your way of being, that you've got to fight your way out of this, or whatever it is they don't like about you, that occurs in some families, I understand, like ours, that's the wrong mode. That's the wrong mode. And if you're being taught that if you don't fight successfully, then you're subject to flight, meaning expulsion by community or by God, that's wrong teaching. That's fight or flight. That's a threat. Any faith community, any news outlet, any view of God that's worth anything, let alone your time and your devotion of your heart, will focus on rest and digest, tend and befriend, not fight or flight. And any politician that's worth having in office will focus on rest and digest, tend and befriend, not fight or flight. And any relationship, including family, that is worth your time and attention, seriously, will focus on rest and digest, tend and befriend, not fight or flight. People say, I don't want all the drama. Yeah, well, you know what? It's fight or flight that gives you the drama. So let that be a red flag for you. Fight or flight is not a sound basis for religion or politics or family or life. It's only a basis for keeping people in check, controlling, and bringing in money. I know, hard to believe, but it happens. Richard Rohr talks about this. He says that the most conservative, rules-based religions intentionally keep people off their game, intentionally keep them thinking they can't hear God for themselves, intentionally keep them immature in their own abilities to grow, to keep them dependent. We don't need that. So I wish you all peace as you rest and digest, as you tend and befriend. From afar, befriending you and sending love to you. Bye.
So as you go from here, now that you've experienced this gathering, I encourage you to act out of confidence, out of caring for others, out of nurturing, not out of running, not out of fighting, not out of fixing, not out of hiding, but to act because you are loved by God, to act because you have a role to play in the world, to act with confidence, even if you don't feel it. You're so beautiful. You are so strong. You are so loved. Have courage. Be kind.